Our speaker today is Rachel Hunter of College of Charleston. Professor Hunter has been overseeing the Corequisite College Algebra courses at the College of Charleston since fall 2020. She has taught the course virtually for a year and will teach it in person this semester. If you have any questions during this session, please feel free to enter those into the chat section at the bottom of the Zoom room screen, and we will be sure to address those at the end of each talk. Without further ado, I will hand it over to Professor Hunter.
Sorry. Thank you, Faith. I appreciate all of y'all coming today. I'm going to start by just going ahead and sharing my screen here. Sorry, hold on one second. Let me present it for y'all. Okay, can y'all see my screen okay? Okay, thank you. So my name is Rachel Hunter. I'm an instructor in the math department at the College of Charleston, and I'm also been overseeing the College Algebra Corequisite courses that we set up. We started running them during the fall of 2020 and are still running them now. So I'm going to give you a little overview of first how we set up the course and why we chose to do this, and then how we ran it virtually and how we're running it in person this semester, which we're excited about. So first off, what are corequisites and why did we choose this route? Corequisite course, basically, it's just a requirement that a student must take a support class at the same time as they're taking another course. So it's a concurrent course that they're taking at the same time. We were noticing at the College of Charleston that we had a lot of students who were coming in underprepared for college algebra. And college algebra is actually already a prerequisite course at the College of Charleston for students who need to take either pre-calculus or business calculus. They maybe would need to take college algebra before that if they're not ready for that class. And so we were having students coming in underprepared for college algebra and thinking, what should we do? Should we create another course for them to take before they take college algebra? We kind of hate that because then it's a whole year of them taking math classes before they're jumping into their material that's actually towards their degree. So we came up with this idea of a co-requisite course and them taking an actual support course at the same time as they're taking their college algebra course. We thought this would be more time efficient, more cost efficient for the students. And also, main goal we had was to lower the DFW rate and hopefully have more students successfully completing college algebra and ready to move on to their next math course. So the way that we set this up, we actually did our course as a 1 credit hour course. We did it that way just so students wouldn't have to pay as much money for the class. So even though they only pay for 1 credit hour, they actually still go to class for 3 contact hours per week. That 1 credit hour is pass fail, and we did that just so that it doesn't affect their GPA at all. We set it up so that graduate assistants are actually teaching the class. And this is really neat because the graduate assistants, it's a way for us to support them financially. It's a way for us to, spend less money running the class. And also they get teaching experience and experience, that will help them moving forward after they graduate. We have approximately 20 students in each section. This was actually when we were online, it was about 20. Now that we've moved to in-person sections, we've bumped that up just a little bit. Our incoming class this semester at the College of Charleston was quite large. So we actually ended up filling all of our college algebra support classes this semester and needing to add a couple extra seats. One thing that's really important when we set this up is we wanted to tell students that are taking this course, we really want to stress to them that it's not another math course that they have to take. Yes, it's labeled math and its acronym, but it's actually just a course. They're not going to have extra homework. They're not going to have extra tests that they have to take or quizzes or assessments. We are really just helping them through their work that they already have for college algebra, where we are providing them worksheets, and it's just skills or the worksheets that we provide them are meant to not be done outside of class. They should do them in class. All of the work that they have for our class, they should be able to do during these 3 contact hours that we see them in during the week. I feel like a lot of the students who are in our classes are students who, have maybe struggled with math, and math maybe isn't their favorite subject. And so when we get them, and they see they see that they have to take another math course, they're not super excited. But we try from the very beginning, again, to just remind them this is meant to help you. We're going to provide additional support, provide extra practice for you, and help you through your college algebra coursework. Another big goal that we have in doing this was all of the students that are in college algebra support are there because they have to take some subsequent math course after this. So they have to take pre-calculus or calculus or business calculus after they're taking this class. And so we don't want students to just be successful in college algebra, but we also want to teach them how to be successful in their subsequent math courses. So we're trying to teach them study habits, trying to teach them about resources that are available for them at the College of Charleston to help them when they move forward into those other classes. So what are some ways that we did that? So when we were teaching this online, the way we set up the course, I kind of did a little breakdown of it here, but basically every Monday, and this is similar for a Tuesday, Thursday section, the breakdown just a little different, but for a Monday, Wednesday, Friday section, there was 50 minutes every week that was a worksheet meeting. This was done over Zoom with the whole entire class on Zoom. This was a time where we created a worksheet that was over a topic that we identified as something that students in college algebra generally struggle with. And so that was their main instruction time. The graduate assistant, would walk through the problems on the worksheet. They would be, we'd put them into breakout rooms on Zoom and let them work on problems in breakout rooms. We would be asking questions while you're teaching that material and letting students get that instruction time on a topic that we've identified as something that generally is more challenging out of the college algebra coursework. So they would do that every Monday. And sometimes there would be, 4, 5, maybe 6 problems that they didn't quite get to or get to finish during that meeting. So the rest of the week, each student would be assigned to meet in one small group throughout the week. So small group 1 or small group 2 or 3 or 4, these were each a 25-minute meeting. And that's exactly what it says. It's a smaller group of students getting on Zoom and being able to talk in a more personal setting. We felt like on Zoom with a group of 20 students, it's hard to talk to every person and to really get a feel for what that student might need help with. Especially some of the students who struggle, they sometimes are scared to ask a question. So we set up this time for them to be in a smaller setting and bring questions that they have, or finish up those 4 to 6 problems on the worksheet that they didn't get to finish yet, or review for a test, bring up problems from their practice tests that they maybe were struggling with. During that time, the graduate assistant would also host those meetings, and they generally would have a few problems ready just in case there wasn't a lot of questions. But most of the time, students came with just 1 or 2 questions that they were having trouble with, and we were able to help them with that. Students were required to just attend one small group each week, but we told students you're more than welcome to attend more than one. You could attend all 4 small group meetings if you wanted to in a week, and get that extra help. So here's an example of what the worksheets look like. For example, here's one on exponent rules, where we went over the rules at the beginning of the meeting, and then there's problems for them to try here afterwards. Here's an example of a test review worksheet. I would really just kind of pick problems that I recognize that students kind of struggled with on previous tests, in previous semesters, and work through some of those problems with the students. And what would happen is, I should have mentioned this as well, they would go over the worksheet meetings on Mondays, and they would actually have until Friday evening to get those worksheets turned in. And those worksheets did count for a grade, but what we felt like is they did the majority of the worksheet, about 90 to 95% of it was gone over during this 50-minute worksheet meeting. And then they had their small group time to get help, get questions answered on anything that they might have, needed extra help with or been confused about, so that on Friday they were always ready to turn it in, or they should have been ready to turn it in. That went pretty well. There were some attend worksheet meetings. Some of those we were learning, that was one of the big challenges. So how did we come up with their grade? So I mentioned that it was pass fail. And what we did is we just said, as long as a student maintained at least a 75% average in college algebra support, then we would pass them in that class. So they had to keep at least a 75% average, and they also had to pass college algebra to pass college algebra support. If you're looking at this, you'll notice the biggest portion of their grade was those worksheet grades. That was the main thing that they were working on each week. And we felt like, they had plenty of time to get it turned in and plenty of time to get extra help on it. The next biggest portion of their grade was these practice test assignments. These were actually assignments for college algebra. And the majority of college algebra teachers would give students, or every college algebra teacher gave students a practice test and asked them to do it, but they weren't actually required to turn it in to their college algebra teacher. And so because this resource was available to them, we wanted to be sure that our college algebra support students were making good use of this assignment. So we actually required them to turn in the work that they did for their practice tests and let us look over it and see what problems they needed help with. And, sometimes we would go over that in small group. All of the graduate assistants also hosted office hours that students could attend. And, that was a big thing we would always ask them out. Hey, let's pull up your practice test and see how you did on it and go over any problems that you might have missed. Because we knew we were asking students to do that. We also created a final exam review assignment for them that they did during class time as well. The other big thing that we did is during fall of 2020 and spring of 21, we asked or required students to attend math lab and office hours throughout the semester as part of their college algebra support grade. Our main goal in doing this is that we wanted, I mentioned this idea of we wanted students to learn how to take a math class, to learn how to study, to learn how to be successful math students. And with these students that generally struggle with math, we wanted them to be aware of the resources that are available to them. And so we felt like the best way to do that was to actually require them to use those resources. And so during the last two semesters, fall of 20 and spring of 21, we actually asked them to attend Math Lab, which is the free tutoring service that College of Charleston provides, and or office hours at least 10 times throughout the semester. So you can see here, I actually copy and pasted a example of how we tracked this, just what date they attended and the initials of who, hosted that office hours or math lab. And then they got a grade for that. You can see some students attended more than 10 times, and obviously some students didn't get their full 10 visits in. I will say that's probably the biggest complaint that we got about the course. Students really didn't like that idea of, make us forcing them to go get that help. A lot of students said they didn't need the help, even though their test scores and overall average in college algebra would, I would maybe disagree with that. But we felt like too, so one way we kind of helped ease that is we told students, maybe you're required to attend small group 1. And we told them that if they attended an additional small group throughout the week, which was more than welcome for them to do. So if they stayed for small group 1 and small group 2, we would count that as an office hours visit because we felt like it was time where they were going above and beyond and getting extra help. The other portion of their grade was really just attendance. Were they online on Zoom with their camera on? And if we called on them, did they answer? And again, as long as they were keeping that 75% threshold, then we would pass them in college algebra support. So a lot of this was just, did you attend our course meetings? And while you attended them, were you actually on task and doing what we were asking you to do? And as long as you did that, there was really no, people kept a 99% average in college algebra support as long as they were on task. Some other things we did behind the scenes. So obviously behind the scenes, we asked the graduate assistants to record attendance, and they just did this from their Zoom reports that they could print out. We also kept what was called, we called it a struggling student spreadsheet. We shared that between the college algebra teachers. Basically there, we would look up their test scores, see how they were doing in college algebra. And if we noticed anybody that was really having a hard time, we would, comment and say, hey, I've been reaching out to Rachel and trying to meet with her and trying to get her to come to office hours. Has she been getting any help from you? While we weren't on campus, especially, we wanted to find a way where our college algebra support teachers could communicate nicely with our college algebra teachers. And so that shared spreadsheet was the best way that we felt to do that. We would also, sometimes students would miss class for a week or two, and that was a nice place where we could say, Rachel hasn't been in class for the last 2 weeks. Have they been coming to college algebra, or, are they missing there too? And then we could figure out, is there something going on with that student? It was an easy way for us to communicate there. The graduate assistants and myself also recorded the math lab and office hours visits. I showed you that just a minute ago. The graduate assistants were required to do all of the grading, which was grading the worksheets, and then also students got a completeness grade for doing their practice test assignments. I provided them all the rubrics and answer keys for them to do that grading, but they were required to do that every week. Also, every week I would host a meeting. So we had 6 graduate assistants teaching these classes. We run 6 sections, so 1 graduate assistant per section. So all 7 of us would find a time during the week, Wednesdays at 10 a.m. or whatever it might be, where we were all free for an hour and we could just get on Zoom and talk about how the course was going, how are students doing? What are some things in your section that you see students are struggling with? Maybe we went over factoring this week, but I felt like a lot of my students really didn't still understand, some prerequisite material before that. So let's work backwards a little bit. And before we jump into factoring, let's remind them how to multiply polynomials or something like that. It was a nice time for us to meet and just get feedback on where the students were and what issues they were having. Obviously, while we were teaching virtually, a lot of it was troubleshooting, virtual or, technology issues as well, while the graduate assistants were still learning that idea. But this is kind of what we would do behind the scenes. This is an example here of the calendar that I gave students where they could see, each Monday there was a worksheet meeting, and then Wednesdays and Fridays were times that they had small group meetings as well. Some student feedback that we got, I included here. You're welcome to read through it. Overall, we got a lot of positive feedback that students felt comfortable in the smaller setting getting help. And I think that students also liked that in that room, there was other students who they're struggling as well, and they weren't as scared to ask their questions. I felt like, students would, understand that no question is a silly question once they started asking, once they got comfortable with asking. And I really liked that. Also, the graduate assistants did a really good job, especially while we were on Zoom. And, students will email you at 10 p.m. at night and, oh, I need help before my test tomorrow. I got to take it at 5 o'clock. And they did a really good job of scheduling times to meet with students and give them extra help, even at the last minute like that. And so I was really proud of our graduate assistants for doing that and just, being flexible with the students, especially during their freshman year and while they're adjusting to the online learning. And, they had a lot of adjustments and hard things going on while we were learning virtually. And so that was something I was really proud of. The big question is, did we see a change in the DFW rate for college algebra? Overall, we, for fall of 2020 and spring of 21, didn't see a very drastic change. Obviously, there were a lot of other things going on during those semesters that we felt like could have influenced the DFW rate as well. One thing that we're still working on is looking at, from a previous semester, maybe fall of 2019, when we didn't run these college algebra support classes. We're trying to figure out a good way to look at the subset of students who would have been identified as being in college algebra support and what their DFW rate is, and then look at the DFW rate of students in fall of 2020 who actually were in college algebra support. And did, the DFW rate change between just that subset of students? So it's kind of hard to compare it for the whole college algebra sections because not every student in college algebra is also required to take college algebra support. So we just identify certain students who we feel like need that extra help and are required to take it. So hopefully I'll have more answers to that in the next coming couple of weeks. Our institutional research at the College of Charleston has been working with me on trying to get some more answers on how we can get that data and see, if the class really did make a good difference for these students. So this semester, we're really excited because we're hosting the classes in person. And we feel like the students are getting a lot more help because we're actually able to, easily see what they're writing on a sheet of paper and notice, oh, all you did is divide by a negative on the right side of the equation and you forgot to do it on the left side as well. Or, 4 divided by 2 is actually 2, not 7 or something. Some of those silly little mistakes that were hard to catch over Zoom because we couldn't see the students' work. They were trying to talk us through problems versus being able to easily show us their handwritten work. Where, now we can just say, hey, show me what you were working on, and we can work through and figure out what you were having trouble with. We did change the setup a little bit. Instead of there being one long worksheet meeting at the beginning of the week and then the small group time, we've actually changed it so that students every day have a shorter worksheet. So, instead of going over all the exponent rules at once, maybe we go over just 3 of the exponent rules at once and just practice using those 3 exponent rules. And then the next day, we're going to go over 3 more exponent rules and do some more practice problems with those 3 rules. And maybe on Friday, we're going to mix all of the rules together and have them practice some more problems. So they're seeing exponent rules all throughout the week and not all a big chunk of them at once. So far, this has been going really well. I think the students like this idea of it being a shorter instruction time. The instruction time is probably only 10 to 15 minutes, for the graduate assistant to go over these 3 rules and maybe work through 3 example problems. And then there's a few example problems that the students try on their own. And we actually let them work in groups some days. Some days we ask them to work individually. Some days we say, find a partner and work through these problems. We kind of move it around, and we force the students also to work with different students in the room. We don't want them to always work with the same partner. One thing we really like about college algebra support is we want these students to make connections in the classroom, meet with somebody who is also in college algebra and, get their name and phone number so that when y'all are studying for your test next week, maybe y'all can meet at the library at the same time and work on those things. And so we're forcing them to work with different people each week to try to get them to meet as many people as they can in their room. So they do that worksheet at the beginning of every class. Generally, it takes about 30 minutes. And that last 20 minutes of the class period is just time for them to pull out their computers, work on their college algebra coursework. It's actually still all done in an online learning platform, and get any questions answered that they have. During that time, the graduate assistant is just moving around the room and, 1, checking that the students are on task, but 2, does anybody need help? Are you stuck on these problems? How can I help you? And I feel like this semester, the students are getting a lot more help than they were over Zoom, because sometimes someone will ask a question and, maybe the person sitting next to them will say, oh, I was really confused about that too. And then it turns into like, there's several people in the room who are all confused about, factoring when that leading coefficient doesn't equal 1. Let's go over 2 of those problems on the board for a couple minutes. And so students are recognizing that they're not the only ones struggling with the topics, and they are more apt to speak up and say, oh, I was confused about that as well, than I feel like they were when we were doing this on Zoom. On Zoom, we really had a hard time getting that, students speaking up and asking questions while we were in these bigger groups. When we did small group, it was pretty, students were more comfortable, but on those worksheet meetings, a lot of times students would just say, oh, well, I can watch the recording if I was confused and go back, instead of let's ask a question during class time. And so we're getting a lot of that now, and we're excited about that. The other thing that we've changed this semester is we're not requiring students to go to math lab and office hours anymore for an actual grade. It's now just optional for them to attend that if they would like to. We also let the students take their practice test actually in college algebra support class time.
Mr. Hunter, I don't mean to interrupt, but you do.
I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine. You just have 1 minute left, and there is a question in the chat if you would like.
Okay, let me answer it.
So
because the end of this is just kind of time for you to get questions. Oh, I'm sorry, Faith. I didn't see you were messaging me. Is
You're
the work
perfectly fine.
driven by college algebra instructor? So Each college algebra instructor, I actually provide all of the handouts and work for them to do. So I provide everything, which I teach college algebra as well, but I provide everything for the graduate assistants to do in college algebra support. And all sections of college algebra support are doing the same thing. The other thing that's very nice is we have required all college algebra sections to stay on the same schedule. Their tests are always on the same weeks, and it's always covering the same material each week, so that our college algebra support classes line up nicely with what they're doing in college algebra. And then Jason asked, do students attend a separate college algebra lecture? And the answer is yes. So they attend college algebra support for 3 hours per week, and then they also attend a college algebra class for 3 hours per week as well. So that, I know that's a lot of math in 1 week, but again, we're trying to make college algebra support just time for them to get help with what they need in college algebra. We're really not, you don't really have to study for college algebra support. We're just helping you study for college algebra. Any other questions? I know it's almost time to go. I'm sorry, I didn't recognize the chat was going off. Any other questions? The last page of this has my email here as well. And if anyone has any other questions or wants to hop on Zoom this week and talk a little bit more about what we're doing, please feel free to email me and I'm happy to meet with you. Overall, I think it's been successful for us having the college algebra support classes. Students who really, what students put into college algebra support is what they'll get out of it. If they want to come in and get extra help and take advantage of the office hours, they tend to do really well on their tests because they've gotten this extra help that's available for them. But some of the students who just don't attend or don't sign into Zoom or don't come to class and don't turn stuff in, they obviously don't get much out of it. So I think my time is up, but if anyone has a question, I'll stay on here on Zoom and answer. If not, thank y'all for coming. I appreciate it.
It looks like we are out of time. Thank you so much, Professor Hunter, for sharing your knowledge and experience with us.